What's up, guys? Welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and welcome to another video guide. In today's video, we are going to take a look at Lann Reynn LD / BT Lufenia stage, and it's gonna be a bit of a doozy. It has a really high cap in terms of the damage that you need to do, but hopefully a lot of the things that I will say today will be able to help you or whenever you watch this video. Anyway, before we do start, like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel and I would really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's start this video. Alright guys, so let's start this off with how to deal with the Lufenia orb. So this starts at 100% or at the start of the fight and actually completely disappears when you hit less than 50% HP of the boss. You do get 8 counters, I guess, when you deal 850,000 damage in one turn. Now if you really think about it, that is a pretty high number. Even with the JP version dealing a ton of damage, 850,000 damage is nothing really to scoff at. So if you really think about it, you are going to be using a lot of your strongest attacks at the start of the fight, and you kind of ease off once you get less than 50%. You can kind of just play it safe as much as possible. Now there are quite a few characters that can deal this damage, believe it or not, and of course Lann and Reynn are going to be the ones who are kind of like a priority character to bring if you do manage to get their LD, and if you get their burst as well, that will definitely help. Other characters that I think can do this are obviously your BT plus characters. If you use their burst ability, you are going to be able to meet that requirement because it's still considered one turn. Now I do have a few notable characters here that can sort of reach that damage output, and the first one is going to be Cid Reigns. Now a lot of people were probably wondering, well, actually, the boss has some sort of resistance to launch damage, and which we'll go through a little bit later. However, Cid can still manage to reach that amount of damage. All you need are basically good debuffs on the boss and a good call ability to meet that requirement. Now the other character that I actually put a question mark here, because he does need a setup, so I don't feel like he's gonna be I guess ready to go straight away to meet that damage requirement, and that is Vaughn. And I do believe you are still you will still need like 3 of, I guess, the boss and the 2 ads present in order to reach that damage potential. I just couldn't manage to do it because he does take some setting up. However, I do feel if he deals 500 damage on the boss, 250 on the other one, and 250 on the other one, you are going to meet that damage requirement. However, he does need a time to set it up, which you don't really have a lot unless you already have a character that meets the requirement. For example, if you already have Lann and Reynn, there's really not much of a point to bring Vaughn along if it's just to fill in the Lufenia orb. However, if you are planning to use him alongside with Lann and Reynn, not only because of the Lufenia orbs but to do a ton of damage, well, that is a completely different story. Alright guys, now let's move on to how the fight works. Now, the mannequins themselves are actually more of a threat than the boss, believe it or not. They can definitely one-shot your team. Wall and Penelo mannequins actually are able to use their LD ability. So if you really think about it, it can deal a ton of damage on you when it comes to Warrior of Light, and then provides shield to the entire party. And Penelo can destroy your buffs and basically, you know, grant some recovery to the enemy's entire party. So they are very, very hard to deal with, unless you basically stun them, paralyze, or something along those lines. I think that is the best way to deal with them, which again we'll go through a little bit later. Now, another mechanic that was introduced in the previous Lufenia fight was the warp turns for the boss. So the boss will warp her turn every 10 turns you take. So, and I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this includes all your free moves as well, as far as I'm aware. So I mean, I didn't really count, you know, from my free turns, but from the looks of it, it does count that. But I'm glad to be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments below. The other thing is, when you hit less than 50%, she will, if both the mannequins are alive, she will heal them. If one of them is dead, she will revive and heal the mannequins that are with her. So I would suggest leaving off some of your paralysis or stuff like that, because their turns can get a little bit closer to your turns as well. So just be careful. Now, the last big thing that I want to let you guys know is that the boss actually have some sort of brave damage reduction with chase damage. So if you think about it, when you chase someone, the brave damage you deal usually at around that time is actually a lot more than usual, but the boss actually has a brave damage reduction. This is why Sid Reigns isn't able to use his full potential to deal that amount of damage easily. Usually Sid Reigns is able to do a ton of damage with chase damage, and you know, I guess Square Enix is trying to stop the Sid Reigns train basically, and he's been useful in a lot of the Lufenia with the right team, and this is, I guess, one way to deal with that. However, you can still circumvent this, and we'll be going through that a little bit later. Alright guys, moving on to, I guess, how to deal with the fight. Now, I've already mentioned a few of these already, but I thought it's still a very good idea to reiterate some of these. So one thing is, you can let the boss have a turn if you don't want to deal with the warp turns. Now, warp turns are essentially, I didn't really mind the warp turns, because half or more than half the time, I think, and more like 80 or 90% of the time, when she warps her turn, a mannequin is actually dead. So all she will do is basically revive that particular mannequin. However, if she warps her turn when the two mannequins are alive, just get ready to be either charmed or do some damage, or some HP damage as well. So like I said, I feel like the mannequins themselves were the harder enemies to deal with, rather than the boss herself. Again, try to confuse, paralyze the mannequins, as they can one-shot your team. And again, I would just reiterate that after less than 50%, she will either revive and heal, or I think both. Revive and heal her team. And if you had like paralysis or something, you know, if one of them was dead already, and you have paralysis, just make sure you have paralysis ready, up and go. Now, the last one can is possibly pretty obvious, but AoE damage is just going to make your life easier. And you know, and you're gonna need AoE damage anyway to basically reach the damage potential that you need to reach in order to increase the Lufenia orb counter. So AoE damage, definitely a must on this particular Lufenia fight. And speaking of the particular Lufenia fight that can basically reach the damage potential that you need to reach, characters that you might want to consider bringing are any of your burst plus character. And the main reason for this is they do have the option to just use their burst burst skill or ability, and most of the time that is already enough to reach the damage potential that you need to reach. A lot of them have like splash damage, which, you know, you're gonna do a ton ton of damage. So other characters, again, Vaughn, he's here, Satsur, Kate Sith, Agrius for the stun lock. Vivi can do a bunch of damage as well. As far as I'm aware, there was someone who managed to clear it with Vivi, believe it or not. Sid Reigns is again here. Even though he is kind of gimped, he is going to be able to do the amount of damage that you need for that damage potential. Again, you know, he's not going to be used on his full potential, but there are other ways to actually do damage with Sid. And the few ways to do this is being able to apply brave damage debuffs or HP damage up debuffs on the enemy, and the biggest thing I think is going to be giving himself some buffs so that he can recover a little bit more of those brave as well at the initial chase sequence. So those are the kinds of things that you may want to consider bringing along. And I guess cult characters, they're a big part of this as well. So you can have a cult Kate Sith or you know, Faris and such, which we'll go through a little bit later. That's how Sid Reigns is able to still get to that amount of damage with his chase. And Aphmau is going to help that as well. Sabin is a great one to bring along with the enchant. Arciela, I mean, this is something that you can bring for HP disable, so you don't have to deal with the mannequins. So there are a few options here. Now, speaking of cult characters, you got Jack, Hope, Gabronth, Kurosame, Kate Sith, and of course Faris. And basically any characters that you can apply damage up debuff and also maybe recover you some brave are the characters, the cult characters that I would really consider bringing. Alright guys, so for party compositions examples, of course my main team here with Call of Duty Cloud of Darkness, Lann Reynn, Agrius, and a call team for Iroha, Kurosame, and Gabronth. Support for Cloud of Darkness as well. And of course, I've got Shiva for my summon. However, that can be changed to any summon really, whichever you really want. Odin is another example that I would probably bring along, since I don't have the other summons all maxed out except for Pandemonium and Ramo. Those are the only summons that I have to level 40 at currently in JP, but you can really bring whoever you want. Next we got Ace, Cloud of Darkness, and Bart's with BT plus. That burst effect is really good. So I would probably use his BT plus if you have it. Faris, Kurosame, and Jack again for your cold team, and support for Cloud of Darkness. Again, with the summons, you can just bring whoever you particularly like. It doesn't really need to be this summon. Next up is going to be a Sid Reigns team. Now, this is going to take advantage of what I was saying earlier, trying to recover as much brave as possible with Bart's. Again, Aphmau is there, Warrior of Light, and Kurosame, and 9 for your cold team. So basically, this team will require you to be a little bit more defensive with your cold team rather than be offensive. Plainly because you are going to be unable to deal with the mannequin's damage. You cannot sort of like, you know, deal with it with like stun and stuff like that. So its potential shields are very good. It can really save your life. Support again for Cloud of Darkness, and summon again could be whoever you want, but I would highly recommend, if you're bringing Sid Reigns along, it's going to be Pandemonium. Now, the last team I have for you guys is going to be a very offensive orientated team with a little bit of paralysis here and there. Vayne, Ace, and Zidane. Zidane can delete turns, you know, and Vayne gives you a lot of free turns. Kate, Sid, Jack, and Shantoto. Shantoto is here mainly to paralyze with her LD if you really need it. Bart's for your support. If you can get a BT plus Bart's, it's definitely gonna help. Zidane, although Zidane's BT plus is nothing to joke at as well. The effects of that is really good. And the summon is Ramuh, only because you really, if you're really in trouble and you need a paralysis, this is one way to do that. Anyway guys, I think I will end the video right here. Although closing remarks regarding the fight, it really feels like the Lufenia Plus in JP right now, it's trying to force you to pull on certain characters, especially obviously the featured character. And I think there was a few videos floating around that you know, there's some concerns regarding this, and I feel for that concern. I believe it was QE's video that he had some concerns with the current you know, Lufenia Plus, you know, doing some force pull or something along those lines. I don't really remember the full details of that video, but I think, you know, even with like this idea of being forced to use the characters that are featured in banners, I still think there are obviously ways to deal with the fight without pulling. I myself pull because a lot of these characters I don't really have yet. Obviously some of the characters now I do, but for example Lann Reynn, I don't have any of their kits, so, and I didn't have Sabin's kit as well, so and you know, Garland's kit, that's why I pulled on them. I want to fill up my roster a little bit more in JP, although I feel like my roster is quite diverse right now. A lot of the characters that I ended up pulling for, I didn't even end up using outside their events, most of the time anyway. But I did have to use a lot of those characters on like Transcendence and Dimensions End or FEOD in JP, so I end up having to use them in the end, you know. But I suppose I'm not a veteran in JP yet. There's obviously characters that I don't have, and I would end up pulling for them because I still have resources. Like I mentioned, I don't have a lot of my summon boards done, and I'm waiting for a ×2 when that happens. So I'm just pulling every time, and that's how I'm being able to manage, you know, to clear a lot of the fights using synergy characters. But I guess for people who are less inclined to pay and or don't have the resources to do so, to pull, I mean, you know, it's getting harder and harder for them to beat certain Lufenia fights, and you know, I can see the concern there. But overall, I think there's still a little bit of diversity, although it's not a lot. Since BT Plus era has just started, I feel like this is how every single one of the tier, I guess, starts, right? From when we had like the 35 CUP era, and then we got to the EX. It was like a bit of a jump, and then you get Cosmos, which was honestly, Cosmos was nothing to it's like the challenge quest, to be completely honest. But once you hit the Chaos era, you know, it was hard at the start as well, and then you sort of like ease off on it, and then the Lufenia, and now Lufenia Plus. So I think there is just that gap where things will be hard until a certain point. So that's all I really have to say about the current Lufenia Plus fights. I feel like, you know, I wanted to let you guys know what I think of it as a new player perspective, I guess. I mean, I'm not a new player. I've been playing for over 6 months, but you know what I mean. I'm not that an expert in JP. You know, half the time I look up the stuff that I need to figure out. And speaking of that, go ahead and check out the Facebook group of the JP English community. They are very, very helpful once again, just to give them a shout out. And that is it for this video, guys. Please do remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel and I would really appreciate it. And if you can share this video, I would really appreciate it as well. You can follow me on Twitter and on Facebook at Munchkins Gaming. This is Munchkins logging off. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next level.